toward Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. I got some rain today. Oh, we need it around here. It's going good. Anyway, July the 13th, 2023. Tonight, comments on comments and question answer. Where do they send their questions, brother? Or just make a comment on this channel? Make a comment here and he'll post it if we get time to it. So we believe God should get the glory for his creation. We're on Rumble and Odyssey and Genesis Baptist Church on YouTube and a whole bunch of places. The fool said in his heart, there's no God. How can anybody with one functioning brain cell look at this and not see design? Do you think the moth knows that his back looks like owl? Do you know what your back looks like if you didn't have a mirror and a camera? I think there was a designer. Anyway, okay, here we are, July. Oh, it should be 13th. I got to move that box over. Okay, let's see. We got one from Creationist Crybaby that caught my attention. Kent, well, when will you understand? We're not talking about the age of each layer when it deposited or flowed as volcanic rock. We're not talking about the age of individual minerals in the rock. Also, the top layer anywhere is one that hasn't eroded away. It had nothing to do with outer space. Crybaby is crying because I say there is no such thing as a geologic column. There are layers to the earth, and they say the top layer is younger, and I say, how could the top layer be younger? Where is it coming from? Outer space? All the layers are the same age. There is no geologic column. We'll talk about that. Index fossils. One thing we've learned by studying fossils is that organisms are constantly changing. Oh, really? Evidence indicates that species inhabit Earth for a certain period of time before they evolve into a new species or die out completely. What evidence? They just make this statement. This is a bold-faced lie. Tell the author I said so if they're still alive, okay? Let's see. Other species remain unchanged for only a short time. It is these organisms that produce index fossils. Scientists use index fossils to determine the age of rock layers. Okay, now, how did they tell the age of the layers? By the kinds of fossils they have in them, okay? Index fossils are species that existed on Earth for short periods of time. They were abundant, they were widespread. They determine the age of rock layers, okay? If you want to believe that, fine. Index fossils, known as guide fossils or indicator fossils, preserved remains of organisms that existed during limited geologic time and are used to identify geologic periods. So the fossil tells you the age of that layer or period, what period it's from. The fossil dates the rock. Index fossils are used to define more distinct periods of geologic time. Okay. Index fossils, guide fossils. Let's see. They exist during limited periods of geologic time and are used to identify and define geologic periods. So the fossils date with the layers. If you find a certain kind of fossil, they'll say, well, that's from the Cretaceous period. Or if you find a dinosaur bone, they're going to say that's Jurassic. This is how it's done. Back in the Scopes monkey trial, 1925, I believe. My throat's about shot here. The atheist lawyer for the ACLU, the American Communist Lawyers Union, he said, the crust of the earth is arranged in a series of horizontal strata of varying thicknesses. I'll agree with that. The lowest layers are obviously the oldest. Stop right there. There is where it turns stupid. The lowest layers are obviously the oldest. So if I should let this thing form 20 layers, is the top layer younger? If I shuffle a deck of cards, is the top layer younger? And I've been asking Creationist Crybaby and others, guys, if the top layer is indeed younger, where did it come from? And where was it all this time waiting for it to land on top? How can the top layer be younger? Let's see. Oh, 4 of clubs is the youngest card now. Wow, okay. This is during the famous Scopes monkey trial. Index fossils, meaning and characteristics. Index fossils, also known as guide fossils, are preserved remains of organisms that were abundant, geographically widespread, distinctive, easy to recognize, fast evolving. Nobody's ever seen any animal evolve. Geologists and scientists use to identify and define geologic periods. So wait, what did they say? They use the fossil to decide what period that is, how old it is, right? What are index fossils? Remains of preserved ancient organisms that were abundant, widespread. Let's see, they're used to define various geologic periods. They serve as a key indicator or guide in telling the geologic period when certain rock layers formed and their age. They date the rock layers by the fossils. Oh, what is this one here? No. Right there. Let's play a little 2-minute video here. There, okay. This is a teacher teaching her students about index fossils.
So I want to take a moment and talk about the concept of an index fossil. An index fossil, this concept is really important, especially if you're going to be going on with me into Geology 102. An index fossil, I like to think of these like a bookmark. So when we find index fossils, it tells me exactly where I am in geologic time.
Did you hear that? If you find an index fossil, that tells you where you are in geologic time. The fossil determines the age of the rock layer. Crybaby, focus.
So an index fossil has to meet 3 criteria in order to become.
Now we can talk about all that some other time. Okay, index fossil meets these criteria. All right, let's see. The oldest rocks are at the bottom of the horizontal sequence, the youngest at the top. Baloney. If I shook this thing up and made a bunch of layers, oh, look at that, dual. Here, let's have a race. All the layers, every grain of sand in here is the same age. It was all put in here at the same time. How can you not get it? Let's see. Most index fossils are from organisms that were successful in being abundant, but vulnerable to extinction or evolve fast. So their time on Earth was short. I see. Examples of index fossils. Wow, look at the hard names here. Paraphysis physiani. Whoa, that's worth something to somebody. Okay, you see those 3 all have curled up like that, right? Although their taxonomy is poorly resolved, the Nautilus family is currently considered to include 7 species. Okay, so there's 7 different kinds of, what's the difference between an ammonite and a Nautilus? Ammonite's the most widely used index fossil. Because they're abundant, they can easily be identified at species level. Well, there were some really big ammonites, okay? Some really big ones. Wow, yeah, no question. And there are some animals today, very similar. How do you know they're even extinct? How index fossils help define geologic time? There it is. They determine the time by the fossil. Every fossil tells something about the age of the rock it's found in. Index fossils are the one that tell the most. Index fossils, called key fossils or type fossils, are those used to define periods of geologic time. Okay. Index fossils are used in formal architecture of geologic time for defining the age, epoch, period, and era. Let's see, the fossil record of the disappearance of major groups. Okay. Index fossil, any animal or plant preserved in the rock record of the Earth that is characteristic of a particular span of geologic time. So that fossil lived during that time. They're dating the rock layer it's from by the type of fossil it contains. Index fossils are the basis for defining boundaries in the geologic time scale. Okay? Index fossils are known as guide or indicator fossils, distributed widely. Let's see. It is used by geologists and paleontologists. They're helpful in determination of organic rocks and fossil assemblage, as well as the study of the time zones. Here we go. The index fossil determines the time. Index fossils are fossils commonly found, widely distributed, helpful in the determination of the age of the organic rock. So they're dating the rock by the fossil. Crybaby, focus, okay? It's a widely distributed fossil regarded as characteristic of a given geological formation. So it's characteristic of that age. Aha. Trilobites lived at different times to ammonites and belemnites. Finding a trilobite fossil tells you the rock was formed in the Paleozoic era. Really. Index fossil tells us what geologic period it belongs in and how old the rock layer is. This is called circular reasoning. I don't know much about this evolutionismmyth.com website, but I like what I saw so far. They say it's circular reasoning. The layers are dated by the fossils, but the fossils are dated by the layers. This is a logical fallacy. They are correct. That a known fossil or recent species or higher taxonomic group, however primitive it might appear, is an actual ancestor of some other group is an assumption, scientifically unjustifiable. For science can never simply assume that which it has the responsibility to demonstrate. It's the burden of each of us to demonstrate the reasonableness of any hypothesis we might care to erect about ancestral conditions. Keeping in mind, we have no ancestor alive today, that in all probability such ancestor has been dead for tens or millions of years. That even in the fossil record, they're not accessible to us. Well, they've known this for a long time, for 40, 50 years now. They've known, look, you guys got a burden of proof. You evolutionists spend a lot of time and energy learning a lot of hard names without even thinking of the bigger picture. If the fossils date the rocks and the rocks date the fossils, do you even think about this as a circular reasoning, which is what it is? Fossil traces have been found in rocks of all ages, with the simplest organisms discovered in the oldest rocks. There's your problem. Many simple organisms are not simple, first of all, but they're found in lower layers. When you shake something up, don't things settle out in different layers automatically? Yeah. The geologic time scale is the calendar for events in Earth. The fossil forms that occur in the rocks, however, provide the chief means of establishing a geologic time scale. But they say, the kinds of fossils you find, that's the chief way to determine what age the rock is. Let's see. The fossil record being used to delineate the beginning and ending of an age, one of the most widely used standard charts showing the relationship between various intervals of geologic time. Okay. Geologic time developed from the fossil record. There is no fossil record. There's a lot of fossils, okay. In 1830, Charles Lyell and some other guys developed a biostratigraphic technique, the geologic column, for dating Cenozoic deposits based on relative proportions of living and extinct species of fossil mollusks. Strangely, little effort has been made to test this assumption. This failure leaves the method vulnerable to circularity, circular reasoning. You are right. Paleontologists, ever since Darwin, have been searching, largely in vain, for the sequence of insensibly graded series of fossils that would stand as examples of the sort of wholesale transformation, changing, of species that Darwin envisioned. Few saw any reason to demur, though it is a startling fact most species remain recognizably themselves virtually unchanged throughout their occurrence in geologic sediments of various ages. Niles Eldredge was a strong believer in evolution. He said, look, we don't see them changing. Circular argument. Interpret the fossil record in terms of a particular theory of evolution, inspect the interpretation, and note that it confirms the theory. Well, it would, wouldn't it? This is so silly. I was near Rapid City, South Dakota, preaching at a church up there, and we went down to the School of Mines in Rapid City. And the guide is showing us around. He stopped off at the geologic column. They're so proud of it, got it all lit up in a case, the geologic scale. He said, now, folks, this layer of rock right here is 70 million years old. My daughter was 12 years old at the time. She raised her hand. She said, sir, how do you know the age of that layer? He said, honey, we tell the age of the layer by the fossils it contains. Scientists use index fossils to determine the age of rock layers. She said, okay. We walked around the other side of the creature here. The guide said, now, folks, these bones are 100 million years old. My daughter raised her hand again. She said, sir, how do you know the age of those bones? He said, honey, we tell the age of the bones by which layer they came from. She said, sir, when we were standing over there, you told me you knew the age of the layers by the bones, And now you're telling me you know the age of the bones by the layers. She said, isn't that circular reasoning? I thought, 12 years old. Wow. That guide had the strangest look on his face. It was almost as if he were thinking. Not quite. Finding particular fossils indicates the age of the rock in which they're found. Okay, just admit it. This is how they do it. There are 1,200 different minerals, okay? They talk about circular reasoning. They admit it themselves. Here we go. In the Glencoe biology book, wherever it is, or here. On one page, they date the rock by the fossil. On the next page, they date the fossil by the rock. Guys, circular reasoning, lie number 10 in my video series. Get the whole series for $50, and then return it when you're done. Get your money back minus the shipping if you'd like. Index fossils, this is circular reasoning. Ammonites, the most widely used index fossil. I'm not sure you could prove they're extinct. Okay? Archaeopteryx had all the brain features of a bird equipped for flight. The word Archaeopteryx means ancient wing. It had claws on its wings. Okay? Some birds today have claws on their wings. The Hoatzin does, the swan, the ibis. Many birds have claws on their wings. Some just don't use them. They'll say, by the way, Archaeopteryx had teeth. They say, well, the birds today don't have teeth. I would point out, going from teeth to no teeth is losing something, not gaining something, okay? That's not going to help your theory. And the hummingbird, so what's this little hummingbird, has teeth in its beak, 48 teeth. Having teeth or not teeth does not prove evolution. Some people have teeth, some don't. Some birds have teeth, some don't. Living fossils. Look at that. Looks just like the fossil they find, doesn't it? Take a tour of these incredible living fossils, like the coelacanth, and they go through and list a bunch. They're found as fossils and they're still alive today. The intelligent layman has long suspected circular reasoning in the use of rocks to date fossils and fossils to date rocks. The geologist has never bothered to think of a good reply, feeling the explanations are not worth the trouble, as long as the work brings results. It cannot be denied, from a strictly philosophical standpoint, geologists are arguing in a circle. The succession of organisms has been determined by a study of their remains embedded in the rocks, and the age of the rocks is determined by the organisms they contain. Encyclopedia Britannica. Ever since William Smith, fossils have been and still are the best and most accurate method of dating and correlating the rocks. Apart from very modern examples, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. They use the radioactive decay to date lava layers. Radiometric dating would not have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. So they use what they call bracketing. Sedimentary rocks can be dated using radioactive carbon, but only up to 50,000 years. In order to date most older fossils, scientists look at the layers of igneous rock or volcanic ash. So they're not dating the fossil, they're dating the layer above and below and giving it a bracket. Let's see. Paleontologists cannot argue this way. There's no way simply to look at a fossil and say how old it is unless you know the age of the rocks it comes from. This poses a problem. If we date the rocks by the fossils, how can we then turn around and talk about patterns of evolutionary change through time? Niles Eldridge. The rocks do date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. Circularity is inherent. We have to use circular reasoning. I see. So they say the charge of circular reasoning, if somebody accuses you of that, can be handled several ways. You just ignore it. It's not the concern of the public. It's none of your business how we do it. Keep sending our tax dollars so we can keep our research. It can be denied by calling down the law of evolution. It can be admitted as a common practice, or it can be avoided by pragmatic reasoning. Are the authorities maintaining, on one hand, that evolution is documented by geology, and on the other, that geology is documented by evolution? Isn't that a circular argument? Yep. The lowest layers are obviously the oldest. Stop right there. There's your problem. Moving water, sideways moving water, deposits multiple layers at the same time. Type in the experiments in stratification in YouTube. It's a video done by some French guy out in Colorado at the experiment tank. You can watch it happen. Multiple layers form sideways. As the current flows, all the layers get longer. So it's very feasible to have a fossil up here that's actually older than one down here. Stop and think about it, crybaby. They say that the geologic column has limestone, a whole bunch of places, limestone. Huh. Well, how would you tell the difference between 100 million year old Jurassic limestone and 600 million year old Cambrian limestone? How do you know the difference? By the index fossils. Let's see. Limestone. Wow, limestone. Man, limestone. Kaibab limestone. Redwall limestone. Wow. Well, there's the Redwall limestone and the Mauve limestone. And there's the Kaibab limestone. How would you tell the age of the limestone? Well, if it contains a trilobite, that helps it determine the age. Bingo. You determine the age of the rock by the fossil. And you determine the age of the fossil by the rock, don't you? Index fossils. Trilobites make good index fossils. If a trilobite's found in a rock layer, it probably formed 500 to 600 million years ago. Really. They found a human shoe print where the guy had stepped on and smashed a trilobite. I don't think trilobites are index fossils for anything. Might be some still alive. One atheist said, when he asked, how do you explain a human with a shoe stepping on a trilobite? He said, maybe aliens visited the planet 600 million years ago. Oh, they'll do it every time. There are some really big trilobites out there, by the way. Trilobites have the most complicated eye ever. This is one of the first creatures to evolve. It's already got the most complicated eye. I don't think so. Trilobites make good index fossils, probably 500 million years ago. Baloney. There's all kinds of different varieties of trilobites. Joe Taylor in Lubbock, Texas, was a good friend of mine. Mount Blanco Museum, Crosbyton, Texas. He died here. I just talked to his nephew about an hour ago. He's selling his uncle's huge collection of fossils to pay his hospital bills. I think we can get a bunch of his trilobite collection for $1,200. If you want to help us get it for Dinosaur Adventureland, please do. Trilobites, they could be still alive. There's an isopod found in North Alaska. A friend of mine worked up there at a water treatment plant. He said, Brother Hovind, these things plug up our filters all the time. They're not extinct. They plug up our filters up here. Let's see, graptolite fossils, supposed to be 400 million year old. That's the index fossil for 400 million year old rock. Graptolite, still alive in the South Pacific. Why? How could they date any layer then, guys? How about this one? The Devonian period. What's the index fossil? Oh, the Devonian, look at this fish, a lobe-finned fish. That's the index fossil. Well, guys, I'm sorry, lobe-finned fish are still alive today. How can it be the index fossil? They're swimming around the Indian Ocean. They catch them all the time. That's 410 million years old? I don't think so. Lobe-finned bony fishes, the coelacanth, thought to have been extinct for millions of years until one was caught in 1938. A fish caught in time. This lady wrote a book. Samantha said, yes, look at this fish. That's our own great uncle, 40 million times removed. Samantha, I'm looking at you, I believe you. Lobe-finned fish, the coelacanth, bony fish, wow, turned into cows. Colossians, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. Some of you have been spoiled. Crybaby, you've been spoiled, okay? You've been brainwashed. You've been lied to. They delight in lies. Now, Crybaby said, Kent, when will you understand? Crybaby, I think I do understand. All the layers are the same age. All over the world, petrified trees are standing up, connecting all the layers. There is no such thing as a geologic column. I don't want to hurt your feelings. You were lied to. There is no Easter Bunny, okay? There is no Santa Claus. And there is no geologic column. I'm sorry, you got lied to. You were lied to. Reindeer can't fly. Sorry. And there's no such thing as a family tree. No animals ever change to other kinds of animals. God said they'd bring forth after their kind. You probably got lied to about Superman. He can't fly. Did you know putting your underwear on the outside of your pants does not give you superpowers? You were lied to. The turtle didn't really race the rabbit. Turtles don't care about races. It's a lie. There never was a purple-haired dragon that could make himself invisible. Sorry. There never was a genie in a bottle that sounded like Robin Williams. So put mommy's red towel back in the drawer and take the red underwear and socks off before your neighbors see you. You're a big boy now. Stop pretending. There is no geologic column. All the layers are the same age. There is no fossil record. There is no family tree. Evolution doesn't happen. All that on one comment. Thank you, crybaby. I appreciate that. I really do. Okay. What else you got there, brother? What?
Here he is again.
Here he is again? Kent, do you think volcanic layers are laid down vertically? I think volcanic layers are generally laid down horizontally. They can go down the side of a volcano at an angle. I mean, they do form at angles too. Okay. There'd be a lot of factors involved here. And then at the end of the flood, the Bible says the mountains rose down. I think the layers that were deposited during the flood could be twisted and contorted and wiped off. We cover that in great detail in video number 6 about the geology of the earth. The Bible said the scoffers would be ignorant of the flood, though. But yes, I believe the layers can be laid down several different ways and then can be twisted and contorted. What's the question? Why are the layers in the Grand Canyon horizontal? Well, first of all, they're not all horizontal. There's unconformities in the Grand Canyon, but most of them are. That's an area that was undisturbed at the end of the flood. It's a pretty big world, you know, and I got my world here somewhere. So, yeah, parts of it were flexing around, floating up and down. There's layers sticking up sideways. Watch my video 6, okay? Marty, is it possible that dinosaurs were in fences in the ancient pre-flood past, but died in the flood? In fences, I don't know what that means, but I believe very strongly that the animals have always lived with man, dinosaurs included, and Noah took them on the ark, probably babies. After the flood, things changed. We see before the flood, people lived to be 900. After the flood, it dropped off to 400, 200, 100. Today, hardly any make it to 100. Reptiles never stop growing. So after the flood, some of the animals that were on the ark as babies probably couldn't even get big enough to reproduce. Maybe a certain species of dinosaurs had to be, 300 years old and 40 feet long before they're even big enough to mature. And in which case, they would have died off from climate change after the flood or from man's hunting. They called them dragons in those days. So I cover all that on video number 3 about dinosaurs living with man. Okay, what's the best app to subscribe to your work? Joe? YouTube, Rumble, DrDino.com. They're all listed on there. Okay? And thank you. Man of God, was a great grandpa a sea sponge? Oh, who was the sponge? Who told me their grandpa was a sponge? I've got the list of all what the people believe. Let's see. Snake was right. His ancestor is a ladybug. Professor Dave, he's a strawberry. T-Jump is a tomato. Ken Rock is a turtle. So one of them told me they're related to a sponge. You remember who that was? We'd have to upgrade our chart forever. You guys all think you're related to everything. I'm sorry, you're wrong. Okay, next question. Let's see. All right, good. My throat hurts. I've done talking for the day. Come visit Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. If you want to help us with that trilobite collection, I think that'd be cool to have here. Just a matter of money if you want to help. Okay, and we also got those vehicles we mentioned last night. We're trying to swap for a Jeep. I'm going tomorrow morning to Pensacola to look at swapping the truck for a Jeep. I like the truck, but we like the Jeep when we give tours. So we Jeep Wrangler 4-door. Well, I've got the doors off. What do you call mine? It's not a 4-door. It's a 4-hole.